Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to session 63 of our Zoom In, our virtual get together, which we have on every Wednesday. And we are delighted to welcome back Ms. Ishi Khosla. She was part of our Zoom In 29. In Zoom In 29, she shed light on fighting diseases with lifestyle and diet. And today's session is about the role of diet in building immunity. So a warm welcome to you, Mrs. Khosla.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
We are constantly exposed to potentially harmful microbes of all sorts. Our immune system protects us against these harmful microbes as well as certain diseases by recognizing the foreign invaders like bacteria, virus, parasites. When we are unwell or trying to stay well, we seek special food, vitamins, supplements that are believed to boost our immunity. And we all know that humans have two types of immunity. One is innate and the other is adaptive. I'm sure Ms. Khosla will tell us a bit more about it. Like, I mean, we when we feel unwell, we have different types of concoctions, and we become partial to it, like vitamin C, or have chicken soup to boost our immunity and make us feel better. But our immune system is complex and it is influenced by many factors, including our diet. And telling us more about that this evening is Ishi Khosla, a practicing clinical nutritionist, a columnist, an author, an entrepreneur, and a researcher. Welcome to our Zoom In 63, Ms. Khosla. Her picture is gone. But before we start our session, a warm welcome to you, Ishi.
Thank you very much.
We are delighted that you're part of our Zoom In 63. But before we start the evening, I would request the President, General Shankar Prasad, to welcome you and also say a few words. General Prasad, over to you.
Good evening, my friends in Vasant Vihar and Shanti Niketan. Good evening, Ishi. It's such a pleasure having you on our program this evening. Sanjana has said most of the things which I have nothing more to add except from my point of view, this issue of immunity is, a word which everybody's talking about. I need to build immunity. I've had the first sort of vaccine. I've got some 30%, 50%, 60% immunity. When I get the second dose, I'll have 75, 80%, 90% immunity. So immunity word is now kind of a buzz thing and everybody wants to improve his immunity. And the best thing to do is to not only do anything else, but to eat right. And therefore, I think it's the absolute right subject that's been chosen today to build your immunity by eating what you need to eat. And just add one from my side and what to drink with it as well. So both eating and drinking, what improves your immunity would be quite interesting at 7 p.m. in the evening as to what really improves your immunity by drinking what. That is a large number of my friends in Vasantla would be keen to know. Well, thank you very much once again, and thank you very much all the residents and members of the Club of Vasant Vihar and Shanti Niketan. Over to you, Sanjana.
Thank you, General Prasad. A little bit about Ms. Khosla. Actually, it's not a little, it's a lot, but I will just say a few lines. Ishi Khosla has a clinical practice at the Center for Dietary Counseling in Delhi, where she deals with a wide range of nutrition-related health problems, including obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, digestive orders, food allergy, etc. To reach out to a global audience, Ms. Khosla has founded a unique score-based nutrition app, which we will find out more about. An app which has helped people across the world not only to lose weight in a scientific manner, but also to understand the science and art of eating right. Passionate about nutrition and a strong believer in the power of food, she spearheaded the first of its kind, a health food company in India called Whole Foods, producing and retailing health food and operating health cafes. As a part of a commitment towards public health and community nutrition, Ms. Khosla has founded the Celiac Society of India, the first of its kind in India again, to spearhead awareness about gluten-related disorders in India and internationally, something which is again very topical at the moment. She has also been involved in community service through All India Women's Association and the Delhi Commonwealth Women's Association. She has been felicitated many a times and recently by the President of India for her work in the field of nutrition, amongst other recognitions. She has been an advisor to several organizations, multinational companies, and is on board of many international institutions. She lectures and writes exclusively and has authored many books. Some of them are Eating at Work, The Diet Doctor, Is Wheat Killing You, and The Cholesterol Facts. Presenting before you one of the 25 most powerful women in India. Welcome to the show, Ms. Khosla.
Thank you so much.
Can we begin this evening? Can we begin this evening by simply putting to you a very difficult question? How does diet help boosting our immunity? And in diet, obviously, we have to factor in drinks as well, which the president has so importantly added to the definition of food. Over to you, Ms. Khosla.
Thank you very much, Sanjana. Thank you very much, General Prasad and Basant Vihar Club for inviting me today and sharing my thoughts. And once again, and it's a privilege to be among such an elite group. Yes, like you rightly said, that there has been never a time where this subject of immunity has gained so much importance, and for the right reasons. Of course, it's sad that we paid a huge price. It's been a pandemic which has taken us to to look at what we are eating, but all the same, the concerns are real, and every day I hear questions and all kinds of people want to know ye khaye, ye na khaye, ye kare, ye na kare, just how to fight the infection, then how to deal with it if you have the infection, then what to do post-COVID. Now that's a huge challenge, and it's called long-COVID nutrition. And these are now becoming conversations which are increasingly important. And then post-vaccine, is there a diet post-vaccine? How can we maximize the immune system's efficiency and the antibody production by the right diet? So all of these are important, and I just thought I would I would speak on something which is more holistic, just understanding immunity and understanding what is the difference between two people. When the infection comes home, say there are 5 people, if one gets it and the other four don't, or 4 get it and that one person doesn't get it. So there could be, of course, differences in exposure and viral load, etc. But certainly there is also sometimes, I would say most of the time, the difference lies in the individual immune system, one body versus the other. So what is that real difference between one and the other? And there was a study done recently where they said that in people with mortality from COVID, they studied in several studies, they found that 94% of those who died of COVID had a comorbidity, which meant either they were obese, or they had diabetes, or they had heart disease, or they had hypertension or something else. But some comorbidity was a common factor. And that means 6% really died of COVID per se, of the real infection. But this was an alarming figure. And if you really look deep into what is the common thread among these people, which means what is common between high blood pressure, what is common between heart disease, diabetes, and obesity, and others, the common thread is really inflammation. These are all inflammatory conditions. So this inflammation in the body, as we call it, low-grade inflammation, is something which is one of the key drivers for the efficiency of our immune system. So bodies which have low-grade chronic inflammation are likely to have a lower or a more inefficient immune system compared to those who have less inflammation. So what is inflammation? And today, of course, everyone's talking about inflammatory markers and CRPs and ferritins and IL-6, etc. So inflammation is being spoken about extensively. So let's just talk about inflammation and the connection with immunity, and then get on to the conversation on what to eat and how to eat, etc. I somehow am not able to come to that unless and until I share with you the basics so that you can understand why you're doing what you're doing, where is the need and how you can manipulate your diet, not just by blindly having a vitamin or blindly having a kara or some immunoboosting products. So
जितना मैं सुनती हूँ उनके तो आधे लोग
So, Costa, you started with a very important point about inflammation. I mean, inflammation is something which we are actually now getting to understand a little bit more about. It was something which was completely ignored before. Can you tell us a little bit more about why inflammation is becoming such an important marker for us?
Oh, absolutely. So actually, inflammation is something which is a protective mechanism of our body. And if we didn't have inflammation, we would not be able to fight diseases. So we need a certain amount of inflammation to be able to fight diseases. And inflammation is literally like a fire in the body. And it's like when you get fever, you know, your body is fighting an infection. It's a adaptation, a physiological mechanism by which the body will try and kill the pathogen. So inflammation is a good thing, which is what we call acute inflammation. But when it goes out of order, out of hand, it can be it can be lethal. It can cause diseases, and it can be very, very destructive. So a simple way of understanding inflammation is like fire. A certain amount of heat is good for us, but when there is too much fire, too much heat, and there is destruction. So it can go both ways. And we find that chronic low-grade inflammation, that means every day if there is inflammation in the body, because of whatever reasons, that predisposes to several diseases, disorders, and several health conditions, some of which we have already shared. But today, actually, science has come to the conclusion that the starting origin of all diseases is actually inflammation. So whether we're talking about heart disease, or we're talking about diabetes, or we're talking about cancer, or we're talking about a thyroid problem, everything, the starting point of all of these problems is low-grade inflammation. So where is this inflammation coming from? Why is there inflammation, and what is the connection with immunity? I will just elaborate. So I just need you to be very clear that acute inflammation and chronic inflammation are different. And in the body, when you have the COVID virus, it is the inflammation, the cytokine storm, which is causing the inflammation, which becomes really the destructive part. And that's how things go out of hand. And we have several serious consequences of that. So it's really important to understand that whether we are building immunity, fighting the COVID, or we are trying to restore the body after COVID infection, we have to extinguish the fire. We have to calm the body and cool the body. So that is where the recovery from COVID also happens. In every process, whether it is pre or during or post, we have to take a diet which is anti-inflammatory, which will control the inflammation and protect us and restore the cellular health, and regenerate the army. And so it's really like we have General Prasad here, who understands war like nobody else. But this is when during COVID is nothing but a war-like situation. And I will explain that a little later. But to get back to the immunity subject, that if you have inflammation, high degree of inflammation or baseline inflammation in bodies which are more inflamed, we know that the immune system is not going to function as well. So whether it, like I said, among the three situations, pre, post, and during, and in fact, even post-vaccination, there is a degree of inflammation which is being created to get the antibodies up. So the diet has to be anti-inflammatory, but what is causing the inflammation on a daily basis is our food. So our nutrition and when we have inflammation because of our food, it is affecting our digestive system. Now, how am I bringing the digestive system here when we have a COVID, which is a respiratory virus? The reason is because if you understand immunity, you don't think of it as an organ. You just think of immunity as a word. We don't know where the immune system is sitting. What is the immune system? You have a heart and you have a circulatory system, you have a urinary system, the renal system is there. We all understand where it is lying. But what about the immune system? The immune system is actually sitting in the digestive system. So more than 70% of the immune system is sitting in the digestive system. And if I say digestive system, I am specifically implying the gut, the intestines, the small intestines. So clearly, if there is inflammation in the food that you're eating, then your digestive system, that means your gut is getting inflamed. And if your gut is getting inflamed, your immunity is being compromised. So that's how the connection fits in. So what is not good for your gut is not going to be good for your immunity, clearly. And you will find that most of our foods that we eat, when we are talking about the karas, the cinnamon water and the various kinds of potions that the probiotics, all of these are actually first good for our digestion, and that's how they work for our immunity. So the practitioners of traditional medicine, even Hippocrates, has established that all diseases begin in the gut. And this is being confirmed today by modern science. And today, again, it has become far more important than ever before. And what happens during the infection, that the virus also affects the gut. That connection we know. It affects the lungs, certainly. But how does it affect the gut? Like I said, there is, I'm talking of two different things. Please don't get confused. But I'm talking about the food and inflammation. And I'm also talking about the virus which causes inflammation. So both ways we get, during the COVID attack, we are, we get subjected to increased levels of inflammation. And hence, we need to get to the diet which works for us in terms of protective towards our gut. And what happens during this kind of a war is literally like what happens at the border. During a war, our borders get broken, and there is what we call infiltration, and then there is firing, and then there is heat, and there is all the mess that happens around. And quite literally, the same thing is happening in the borders, whether it's the lungs or the gut. the virus enters through the gut lining, and when that happens, or it is the food which could be causing this leak, and it opens up and causes the cascade of reactions. So this is what we call a leaky gut. And the reason for this leaky gut is purely today, as we understand, our lifestyle. There are many other reasons for this leaky gut, but among the lifestyle factors, the number one factor is the inflammatory foods in our diet, and the inflammatory components in our diet, and of course, the lifestyle habits. So what are these things? And therefore, if we understand what are these triggers for inflammation, then we are able to, plan and sort of build a good, healthy immune system and a resilient body. And as even tight borders, how do we make strong borders? So literally we have to, like every cell has a cell membrane, we have to strengthen that cell membrane. The gut is a single cell membrane. We need to make that border strong. So that's how we have to eat, and that's how we have to build our nutrition. So the reason, I am going to just get on to it, but the other ways in which inflammation affects us is, one of the mechanisms is through excess weight, the insulin mechanism, the hormonal effect of food. So I will come to that also a little later. And of course, nutrition, poor nutrition. There are certain nutrients, or rather I would say absence of certain nutrients in our food which predispose to inflammation. And that leads to the gut issue and the leaky gut. So I'll address each of these. So basically, what are the the foods which we can eat to protect inflammation, and how does the gut affect us? So basically, building back the gut and restoring a balance of insulin, so that mechanism is very important. Like I said, the data said 94% of people had the comorbidity, which means they also perhaps with obesity had insulin resistance. So that's another conversation. So these are 4 or 5 points which I'm going to elaborate on. And let's look at how this the gut works, and how this the phenomena of the leaky gut works. So all of this is actually mediated by the microorganisms called the gut flora. Like we have the soil in our garden, this is how we have the flora in our gut, which is really the immune system. It's also the gut lymphoid, gut associated lymphoid tissue. That's the largest, it's called GALT, the largest immune organ of the body. All this is being manipulated or orchestrated by these tiny microorganisms, which are the bacteria, the fungi, the viruses. And there is a certain balance between the good and the bad. So there are the good ones and there are some pathogenic ones. When there is an imbalance in these good and bad bacteria balance, it's what we call dysbiosis, and this dysbiosis leads to a lowered immunity. It leads to many other issues that we daily deal with. I would not hesitate to say that it controls every aspect of our being, right from being healthy to being unhealthy, to being happy to being unhappy, our moods, our mental situation, our levels of inflammation, our absorption of nutrients, whether we are picking up the food, the nutrients from our food or no. Why we have vitamin B12 deficiency, why are we having vitamin D deficiency, despite having so much access to so much good food? We are still battling in a land of sunshine of vitamin D deficiency. So why do we need to top up all the time with nutrients which we should actually be getting from our food? Our ancestors never needed these supplements. So where are we going wrong? And this is what is basically being controlled by these microorganisms, and they determine what is being picked up. And not only that, these microorganisms also have their own genes. And the host also has its own genes. So our body, the health of our body is determined by a combination or like a combined effect of the genes of our flora and our body. So you can imagine there are trillions of genes which are constantly being there is literally like a symphony being played between them to determine what is going to happen and what is not going to happen, what is the outcome. So even if we have a predisposition, like a gene predisposition to a disease, this interplay of the genes of the microflora with us will determine whether that gene is expressed or not expressed. So it's it's amazing that today the whole world.
Can I just interrupt you here and ask you that is it possible to change? I mean, what you're telling us, it's very important that the gene of the flora inside our gut and our gene is responsible, for our immunity and for our well-being. So, is it possible to actually change the gene component inside our gut by changing the flora and fauna and the microbiome which is there in the gut?
Of course, there is a lot that can happen, a lot that can manipulation. But in the laboratory, they have done experiments where they have translocated it's called translocation of gut flora, where they, from one human being to the other, they have changed the flora and found a completely different outcome. So if it's an obese person's flora has been translocated into a thin person's blood flora, they find that the obese person becomes thin and the thin person becomes obese. And like that, the mood, if you have a happy person and a sad person, the depressed person becomes, so they are able to manipulate. And therefore that is the profundity of the entire importance of the gut flora. And to answer your question, you absolutely can, and that is why I'm talking about it. And as we go along, I will explain to you. But let's first understand what destroys this balance. So in a certain way, really, if anyone's wanting to make that shift on eating better to prevent inflammation, to prevent diseases, to promote immunity, that one single thing that needs to be done is to pamper your gut flora. That's the one single thing. Give it food which it likes, which does not. And once you do that, you can actually modulate everything else, including your body weight. Because the gut, like I said earlier, controls everything. It's like a control panel. So the fire, the lung is in the site of war is the lung. The site of the action is the lung, but the war is being managed by the gut, right? So that is what we call the base camp, the base of, the head office or whatever you want to call it. So everything can be manipulated from here, even during the illness. So to pamper your gut flora is which means even your appetite, even how much you eat, your cravings, your palate, everything is here. So if you bring back the normal flora, you are reactivating your innate responses, which you were born with in terms of what to eat and your preferences. We see that all the time. This is only conversation with you, but in my practice, I see that happening in very short spans of time of dietary. Within 10 days, 2 weeks, people start feeling the difference. And then they, eat the trigger food and they go back to feeling the same way. So, I mean, this, of course, can be a long run. I would rather invite questions, but I will just give you a brief overview of how the immune system is working through the gut, and therefore how you can in very simple ways manipulate this important area, which is squarely in our control, what goes into our mouth. So at a macro level, let's say the chemicals, the gut microbiome hate chemicals. They do not like things which are artificial and synthetic. So they don't like pesticide-laden food. They don't like additive-laden food. So obviously, your choices then. Try and eat food which is does not give you the chemicals. Avoid food, medicines, all the chemotherapeutic medicines which are being taken. So once I give you this insight, you'll be able to even treat yourself in any situation, which means medicines need to be taken when you're sick. When you have to have your antibiotic and your steroids, you just have to have it. But certainly you are killing the good flora, you are playing with your immune system, and you are getting immunocompromised. And it's not therefore surprising that today we are talking about the black fungus and all the other numerous side effects of post-COVID, issues that are being dealt with. People right from getting into depression to getting into high cholesterol, getting heart attacks, getting autoimmune problems, skin rashes, because you have bombarded your gut flora. You have literally wiped out the gut flora, your own immune system. You spoke about the innate immunity. The innate immunity has everything to do with your gut barrier. That's your border. So your skin, your outside skin and your inner gut lining are the innate immunity. And the gut flora is a part of it. And when you have the insults of this kind on your body, you are doing what you're doing. You can imagine what happens. Why do you think we get rashes? Why do you think we get, I just had a patient who had the worst kind of rash I have seen post-COVID, and then they figured it was going to get into an autoimmune problem, lupus, etc. But these are just examples, but manifestations could be many more. But because like I said, and even diabetes, and today we are seeing a lot of increased appetite because of the steroids and belly fat which is coming up. So I did hint and kind of tell you that body weight, excess body weight and central obesity is inflammatory. So, and we know that with steroids and all of these things, we are getting into high sugars, etc. And that kind of triggers problems long term. So we need to understand how to manipulate this sort of inflammation and promote the good flora. And so that is about chemicals. Then stress itself can affect your gut flora. You know that if you get stressed, you need to run to the loo. Very often that is a connection. So there is a gut and brain axis also, which means that it connects to your brain. There's a gut and skin axis. So the connection with the gut, in fact, there are more signals from the brain to the gut than from the brain to the, from the brain downwards. So if there are 8 messages from the gut to the brain, there is one from, so that's the level of importance here. And today the gut is called the second brain. So in a certain way, I think the conversation has to go back into what to do, which means cut down the chemical load on the gut, be happy, remain positive. All of that will improve your gut flora. And the biggest and the most important, last but not the least, there are many factors, but in this conversation, I will talk about the inflammatory proteins that have been found to be affecting our gut flora negatively. These include, to a large extent, people who are sensitive to food, like proteins in wheat and dairy and, corn and soya and some other grains, which tend to be very disturbing to the gut flora. And then they lead to all these other problems I spoke about. But particularly now, even if you were okay before that, during this attack, people can lose tolerance to these proteins. So you may get dairy intolerance, you may not tolerate milk, you may lose tolerance to wheat and other such grains. So definitely post-steroid, you need to be very careful. And I think most of my patients who have been able to tide over these strong medicines have done it without any problem, just by manipulating or completely eliminating these proteins. And too much of sugar also can affect the gut flora negatively. And particularly, again, after the antibiotics, the fungus grows on sugar and thrives on sugars. Therefore, a controlled carbohydrate diet, number one, control the grains and choose your grains according to your digestion, what you can digest. If you are feeling bloated or acidic or constipated, constipation is a huge problem post-COVID now. And so any of these digestive issues, if they are bothering you, that means you're eating some grains which are not suiting you, and maybe also the dairy protein also is a part of that list. So you need to do your individual checks and kind of manipulations and see how you're feeling and how your symptoms are. So remove these inflammatory proteins, and also I would probably include the fact that cutting down on sugar is important, and that is also in a certain way, I'll say, pro-inflammatory. Controlling of carbohydrates, animal proteins to a large extent, to some extent, not large extent, to some extent. Too much of animal protein can be, particularly the processed variety, can be inflammatory. And in the fat variety, now what are the fats which are inflammatory? The good fats are actually anti-inflammatory, which means the virgin coconut oil, the virgin olive oil, mustard oil, sesame oil, they help to douse the fire. They actually reduce inflammation. Whereas the ones which are the bakery fats, the margarines, the ones which are refried, reused oils, the oil which is being consumed, by consuming all the commercially prepared, food, namkeens, etc. Those are inflammatory fats. Highly polyunsaturated fat, meaning the ones which we actually brought into our kitchens in favor of the good ones, like the too much of sunflower oil and too much of kardi oil. These are also inflammatory. So, what if you remove the anti-inflammatory, the pro-inflammatory ones? What are the anti-inflammatory ones? I just told you, but there is the most powerful anti-inflammatory fat or food, I would say, in our food system is the omega-3 fats, the good fats which are found, which are polyunsaturated, but the desirable ones. So these polyunsaturated PUFAs, as we call them, N3 fats or omega-3 fats, are found in fish. Now, everyone doesn't have fish and everyone can't have fish. So they are also found in the plant world in the form of what we call the chia seeds and the flax seeds and the mustard seeds and sesame seeds and the green leafy vegetables. All of these are concentrated sources of these anti-inflammatory fats. Now, you may be thinking green leafy vegetables and fats, but yes, they have these precursors of these omega-3 fats, which if you increase in your diet and add to in substantial amounts or take supplements, high quality omega-3 supplements, you can certainly help to reduce the inflammation, and your the good bacteria also will also thrive. So I would or now get on to the next part of how to build a good flora. So like I said, remove the anti-inflammatory, and remove the pro-inflammatory and add the anti-inflammatory. So what are these other anti-inflammatory foods that we are having, and the nutrients? We have before I go on to the pro and the prebiotics and all the good spices and all of that, because that conversation we all know, we all understand that, the haldi, in fact, if I talk about the spices, there is so much to talk about. I'm going to try and make it, as comprehensive. But if I go to the spices, the turmeric is one of the most powerful anti-inflammatory spices, but you can't have too much of it, but try and have the curcumin or the benefits in some form or the other on a daily basis. But again, one thing about spices, or one thing about everybody, is different. Like I said, our gut flora makes us who we are. It is also our signature. It makes me different from my sibling. It makes me different from my children. So all of us have distinct gut flora. So what is good for me may not be good for the other person. So one man's food is another man's poison, is absolutely apt. So some of these things have to be taken as per individual constitutions. So too much of spice may be too much for me and may be all right for the other person. So while these are good for you, these need to be customized. So who can take milk and who can't is a customized solution. So I can only throw the, the triggers and the information with you, but I can't take those specific, recommendations for each one. But coming back to the conversation on the spices.
So how, again, sorry to interrupt you here, but how does one understand one's own gut flora? Because you're saying that's one of the key components for our well-being.
That's a great question. That's a great question. I'll come to that. I just hope I don't forget that, but just I'll come back to that as soon as I finish. So yeah, essentially all the, the spices have their benefits, the good fats, and the good fats also come from the nuts, the sources of the good fats. Nuts and seeds are wonderful for us, and they provide the fatty acids and the anti-inflammatory benefits. Fiber. And fiber is something which I would put into the category of prebiotics. Prebiotics are foods which help to grow the gut flora in our system. And the probiotics are the actual microorganisms reaching our gut in a certain concentration alive for them to get popular, to what we call colonize over there. So today we have, the pills, we have all these enterogerminas and various kinds of pills and I think everybody who has been through COVID definitely needs, and today I do see them in the prescriptions, and take them for some time so that we repopulate the gut flora, restore the balance. And in among fiber-rich foods, all the foods which have the skins, and they are going to help in building up the flora. But there is something more to be added here, what we call resistant starches. Starches which, like potatoes and rice, which have been boiled, cooled, and then had later, a little while later. They are what we call resistant starches, and also help in building up the good flora in our small intestines. Fermented foods also are, like you have all the kombuchas and the kimchis and all of that, are also triggers for production of good flora. Curd, in fact, I must talk about here, because if I talk about probiotics, everyone thinks about yogurt as a choice of probiotic, but it's important to clarify that while yogurt is a wonderful food and used to be one of the best, I would say, prebiotics in our lives, number one, in respiratory infections, it can cause problems and it can be phlegm producing. So do not try and get that in during the infection. Number two, with dairy intolerance, which I see in a large way because of gluten intolerance, when many people may not tolerate curd. So curd is not for everybody, and it's not a probiotic by the definition. But for those, in certain situations, curd works, like diarrhea, etc. Curd works very well. But again, today, because of the unfortunate onslaught in our gut, because of the wheat issue, many of us are not being able to consume curd. So it is a case-to-case sort of recommendation. And during the illness, please don't have it. And if you have any other inflammatory conditions established, like you have arthritis or any other pains and aches, this is supposed to be food which is to be taken with discretion. So that's about curd. And yeah, so maybe we can talk about the pro and the prebiotics, which help on a routine basis. Take some fermented foods if you are all right. And the phytonutrients. This is a large chunk of conversation which is around vegetables and fruits. Everybody knows that a conversation on good health and eating is around vegetables and fruits. Every visual, every creator will have that. So we all know that, and we somehow don't understand the importance, besides the fact that it's healthy for us. But what makes it so healthy? So it has all the the fiber and all of that. We know that. But the phytonutrients, or I would call them phytochemicals, are in the colors of these vegetables and fruits. So these are literally messengers for our gut flora. and for the genes. They carry the messages. So the colors, literally like the rainbow colors, like we have gem therapy, these are your gems for different colors. You know, you have a blue stone and you have a red stone and so literally those 7 colors have an important role to play in, modulating your immune system. So get the rainbow in. The deeper the color, the better it is, because they modulate our genetics in a very, very fine way. So get your children, of course, to have these, but you have to start building up on these vegetables and fruits. The simple rule is at least half your plate try and have. When you have 4 or 5 things on your table, put the vegetables first and fill up half the plate with it, and then divide the rest of it in the balance. And the other is at least sometimes dedicate one meal for those who are trying to build, are trying to cut down fat, your body fat, or trying to cut down flab on the stomach. You need to cut down calories. Dedicate one meal to this group, which means maybe a breakfast of just fruits or a vegetable juice if you can tolerate it, a lunch of a salad or cooked vegetables, or a dinner of soup and cooked vegetables. So just dedicate one meal, or at least 80% of one meal, to this group. So that's a very easy way of dealing with it. And in each meal, try and have half your plate with vegetables. So this group is really, really important. And I think I would stop here, except that I haven't spoken about hydration, and I haven't even pulled out one slide because I've just started off. So it's all right. The hydration is important for immunity in many ways. Again, we know that much more during illness. During the illness or any illness, whether it's COVID or anything, the body shuts down the appetite control. It doesn't want to digest. It just wants easy to digest food. So eat simple, easy to digest, foods which are high on water. So soups and stews and lots of fluids are important because that's what the body wants at that time. So don't worry if the patient is not eating, but as long as the hydration is enough, that is important. And post-COVID also, hydration is important because it helps to detoxify. It's a war that has happened. There are a lot of toxic substances, undesirable substances sitting in there which need to be flushed out. So literally continue to have that fluid intake, and that's a part of the detoxification. And also the water, of course, is important for other reasons. I won't get into that. And I think I have covered almost everything. Pardon me if I've forgotten something. I'll be happy to take questions on that. And I would just say that just revise the 4 or 5 things that, the diet has to be anti-inflammatory, the gut health has to be addressed. And the third point, before I wind up, I have forgotten, is very important. I did mention the role of nutrients. There are certain vitamins and minerals which are absolutely critical to our immune system, which have actually become heroes now. Some of them have been part of every prescription. These include vitamin D, zinc, vitamin C, and something which is really not being talked about, which must be there, is magnesium. So apart from all the others, and the probiotics and the omega-3s, etc., these nutrients have several immuno-boosting and immunomodulating properties, particularly vitamin D. How vitamin D helps, it's, we've always looked at vitamin D as a bone building or good for the teeth and good for the bones, but vitamin D is way beyond that. It's a hormone, and also today it is now being looked at as a very powerful anti-inflammatory agent. So it can control it can make the difference between mortality and recovery from a patient. So they've done this study, and they found that in ICUs where patients who had vitamin D levels less than 19 nanograms per ml, all of those patients passed away. And those patients who had a vitamin D between 20 and 30, they were like 50-50. And more than 30, all of those people who had vitamin D levels of more than 30, they all survived. So that is one indicator to tell you that it can control inflammation. The mechanisms are very clearly established now. And I spoke to you about building borders, building the leaky gut, rebuilding the leaky gut, and restoring the tight borders and the junctions. Vitamin D plays a huge role in fixing these borders. So please ensure that this nutrient is not ignored, and you keep checking it maybe twice a year, and the family, your staff, everybody needs to be given vitamin D and on a regular basis, besides of course sun exposure. But we find that during these troubled times, sun exposure is just not going to be will not be just enough. You need, the levels should be high and up there. Then we talk about zinc, it's been talked about. Don't overdo any of these. Please do these under supervision. And again, vitamin C helps to detoxify the body, reduce the WBCs which are getting destroyed. All the soldiers which are getting, getting depleted need to be replenished, and vitamin C has a huge role to play. Zinc helps in prevention of the viral replication. So, and plus many other benefits. And magnesium deficiency is something which we cannot document, but we all know that most of us, like I said, we have a bad gut thanks to the food that we are having. We never make up for the optimum levels of magnesium. So this supplement must be given, particularly during the prevention, or I think at every stage. It does, and also is very important for preventing heart arrhythmias and the atrial fibrillation, etc., which we are seeing, and inflammation again. So it's very important for the blood sugar control. It is very important for cardiovascular health. And typically a good supplement should be having a calcium and magnesium ratio. So this conversation can go on and on. So I'm going to stop here. These are things which you need to do under supervision, and you must, take advice professionally from your healthcare provider. And needless to say that, for your government advisory has to be followed and follow all the norms. And, there is something, the last would be eat, of course, seasonal, local, organic, but also bring down your weight. A lot of people tell me that this is not the time, we have to eat at this time and build up our body, and this is not the time to. No, that's not correct. If you are fine, if you have recovered, or you're otherwise, you haven't had COVID, if you have belly fat, if you have extra flab on you, trim down, and this is the time to do it. And fasting is one of the best things you can do to replenish, repair, and restore your body and improve your resilience. So a lot of people say fasting mein kaise karenge, lekin you can just do intermittent fasting. Make a 8-hour window, and 16 hours of not eating is not. There are various ways. I'm not recommending one or the other, but I'm just trying to tell you that in fasting is one of the best tools for restoring health and detoxifying your body, and to help the body cope and repair and give it that rest which it needs to recover, especially for post-COVID. So just a diet of alternate day of vegetables and fruits is a wonderful way of fasting. You can just do a 1 meal fast. You can do, just an alternate grain fast like you do in the Navratras, whatever it is. But I just wanted to bring that up before I wound up. So I'm just going to, with one quote which I like, is that the path to good health is paved with good nutrition and good intestines. And even if you make small changes in your diet, they will actually amount to huge dividends, and it's not that hard. So thank you very much for listening, and my best wishes to everybody. Stay safe, stay well, and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating, and you're right. We can go on for another hour, and we will not tire of listening to what you have to say. There are about 4 quick questions which I have for you, and then we'll take the questions if you have the time. First of all, you mentioned about absorption, the importance of absorption. How does one find out that one's absorption is compromised, and what can one do to enhance it?
Yeah, okay. So, like I said, I have tended to forget your question. So before I forget it again, I'll answer that and then get to this one. So how does one know that one's flora is all right? That was your question. So there are some very simple, common sense ways in knowing whether you're all right. So number one is, your body weight. Are you the right BMI? And do you have belly fat? So that itself is an indicator. And what should be your BMI? Should be less than 23 or 23 maximum. The BMI is a ratio between your body weight in kgs and the height in meters square. And the maximum on your belly should not be more than, for women, more than 80 centimeters, and for women, more than 90 centimeters. So that is an indicator of, how your waist should be, and not difficult. So that's one way of judging. Then how energetic you feel every day. Are you bursting with energy? Are you getting fatigued at points in your day? Are you sleeping? Number three, sleeping well. Are you able to cope with your day, but are you also being able to sleep well? So how healthy is your sleep, not only in terms of the number of hours, but the quality of sleep? So that's another indicator. And how is your bowel movement? Do you have a good bowel movement every day? Or you are constipated, or you have too many, or you have other digestive signals. So these are cry signs, like I say, from the body to tell you that something is not right. So this is one more. And of course, your skin is a great way of telling you, how your skin is looking. Is it healthy? Is it clear? If you have blemishes, if you have acne, if you have problems with your skin, there is something internally which is not right, or which is going on. And I would say these are the 4 or 5 basics that you should look out for. And of course, there is a whole list of things one can list here. But if you have any kind of chronic disease or something is certainly, like I said, is wrong, and there is inflammation going on. So, but if you're otherwise all right, and you're generally good to go in the morning, and positivity. Yes, I forgot about that you should feel positive about life, not negative. If you're getting low mood swings and anger and panic, etc., these are signs that something is amiss. So getting to the question which somebody asked, can you just repeat that question? What was it linked?
We have written on the chat.
1 second. I had 2 more questions. One was about your extensive research into gluten and gluten-related diets. What would your advice be? I mean, I know we are a very diverse group and it's difficult to pinpoint, but since you have done such extensive work about gluten, please tell us a little bit about that.
All right. So let me say that the wheat is one of the 8 allergens. Gluten is one of the proteins of wheat. So its association with disease was known in the form of celiac disease about more than 100 years ago. And it affected about, and I still think it's about a little bit over 1% of the population that suffers from celiac disease, which has a clear damage to the gut because of wheat protein. That is an established condition. But most of the others, say 99%, were all right with wheat. But today, I think the number of people who are reacting or sensitive to wheat have grown significantly, and they do not have celiac disease. And it's called wheat sensitivity or non-celiac wheat sensitivity. And while we don't have enough, data to 100% say that, yes, it happened. I mean, at this point, there's a lot of research going on, but the post-60 Green Revolution made immunogenic changes in wheat. The wheat varieties became from tall grasses to dwarf varieties. The multiple seedlings, also there were chromosomal changes in the wheat. Now, this perhaps has not agreed with the population. And I was reading somewhere that the population after those born after 1960, 1 in 3 will have some form of malignancy or something. So we don't know the exact. So this is something which we can only make an association with. But the fact that modern wheat is immunogenic is very well documented. And so this, what is happening with this is it is causing that leakiness in the gut, like I said, and that is a prelude to several problems. And just about who is and who isn't is difficult to say. It will depend on genetics and overall lifestyle. So not everybody is a candidate for this kind of, but screening is important if you have any of the problems. And the terms of the in terms of documentation, um, the test for celiac disease also came in much later, as late as, I would say about 20 years, 15, 20 years ago, where accurate testing for celiac disease happened. Likewise, today for non-celiac, we don't have accurate testing. So the best way to know will be, there are tests. You can get food sensitivity tests done, and a lot of people find a lot of merit in doing that. And no, but it's not an allergy test. Whenever I'm talking about any of these, it's a food intolerance. Wheat allergy is a different issue, but I'm talking of wheat intolerance. And that those tests are available and you can get them done. It can give you a roadmap ahead. But I think the best way to know it is that in case you feel that it is a trigger food for you, get it out of your system for 2 weeks and then see how you feel. And then bring it back and see how you feel. So that's what we call a gluten challenge. And there are many ways of doing it, but you can just do a simple thing. And I know a lot of people during Navratras, they begin to, start feeling better in those 9 days, and then, but they don't know why that happened. So one of those things, can be done. So that's one thing about wheat sensitivity. But let me tell you, elimination of wheat or just a gluten-free diet is not enough. There is much more to it. And a gluten-free diet can also be very unhealthy. So it has to be a healthy, unprocessed, gluten-free diet. So if I keep having processed gluten-free food full of starches and additives, it's not going to, really help me. It may help my rash, and it may help my some trigger, in terms of the gut, but it will not amount to good health overall. So the diet has to be a healthy gluten-free diet. So that is another important part of the gluten-free this thing. And that when you have a gluten problem, then several other grains are also mimicking gluten. So we find that corn and soya and even oats in most people are trigger foods. So, and of course, 50% or so of those who are gluten intolerant are also dairy intolerant. So it depends on how damaged your gut is and how serious your problem is. And so it has to be case to case. And that this conversation again could be very long. I won't speak more than this, but I hope it's given you a direction and some kind of a...
Yeah, thank
Please
you
take
so
the
much.
questions,
I'll just
please.
read out the questions
Questions.
which have been put in the poll.
Question.
Mr. Bhalla, I'm just reading that out. You just wait.
Okay.
Ashok Ganju wants to know, please could you let us know what are the foods that build the gut flora and reduce inflammation? I think we will need to have a separate session.
Yes, I spoke about building the gut flora with prebiotics and probiotics. So fiber-rich food, good food means unprocessed food, not with pesticides. So and starches, good amount of the good carbohydrates, good fats. These are good. They foster the good bacteria and flora. And I haven't spoken of the word trans fat. I haven't spoken about trans fats at all, because these actually, I did mention the bakery fats. These are toxic fats for the gut flora also. So trans fats are inflammatory for the gut. And so the good fats and the fiber-rich foods and water and fasting and maybe some kind of cleansing of the colon could also help in restoring and rebuilding good flora.
Okay. Mr. Bhalla's question is, your expert views on the various breakfast cereals that are available in the market. For example, oatmeal, cornflakes, muesli, ragi flakes.
They're all different. So oats are different, ragi is different. So depending, like I said, you have to plan your food choices depending on who you are, what are your requirements. I would personally feel whole grains are much better. Processed grains, all of these are processed and they are refined. So unless, I mean, oats may be the exception there. So they are all different, and depending on whatever your requirements are, but certainly cornflakes has very low nutrition. Ragi is a good, as long as it's got the entire grain there, it's a good cereal to have. And oats, it depends on you. If you're fine with oats, then it's a good grain to have, absolutely. But if you're gluten intolerant, I won't include corn and oats.
Muesli, about muesli.
Muesli is again good. Again, depends. Muesli is a mixture of grains, so depending on what it has. And if you are gluten intolerant, then you have to be very careful of the choice of grains. But if you are not, then it's a wonderful cereal to have.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Archana Khandelwal wants to know your views on having supplements.
On supplements, I did express my views that
Yes.
today, I mean, there was a time when I would say that a good diet is adequate to meet requirement as long as it's, planned well and you're eating sensibly. But today, with the malabsorption issue, with the leakiness of the gut and the inflammation and the kind of lifestyles that we are leading, certainly supplements are important, and particularly now that we find certain supplements, certain vitamins have roles to play beyond their nutrition value, beyond their basic, like vitamin C, for instance. Just to prevent scurvy, we needed only 40 milligrams. But today, to fight COVID, we are looking at 2000 mg because they are finding other benefits, antioxidant benefits. So, yes, but they should be done judiciously and under supervision. Too much can be a problem. But on a general note, I will also say that vitamin C and B are relatively the safer ones you can have without worrying too much about toxicity.
Thank you for that. There's a question, which grains are best and should we rotate them?
Which grains are the best depending on who you are. So if you have no problems and you're generally fine, then I would say multi-grains, and do include, India is a treasure of grains. I always say that. We have such a huge variety like no other part of the world. And, if you just look at the grains which are in the Navratra time, we have three, four of those, plus all the millets in different parts of India are different, whether it's ragi, bajra, jowar, and then we have barley, and then of course we have wheat and corn, and so many grains are there. And in case you are looking at cutting down inflammation, I would leave it to rice, different forms of rice, to see what we have we have red rice, brown rice, short grain, long grain, basmati brown, and we also have all the millets. So if you are trying to look at cutting down inflammation, I would keep it to millets and different forms of rice. And yeah, I would, that should be good enough. But if you have digestive issues, millets also should be taken. You must experiment with them. Not everything suits everybody.
This is from Vanita Bhardwaj. What are the indicators of inflammation in the body?
I think I did mention some of the typical on the face of it signs, but inflammation will be manifesting in almost from head to toe. Just if you look at your skin or your hair or your joints or your eyes, or just any kind of physical symptom, plus fatigue, plus if you feel bloated, if you have any kind of digestive issue. Inflammation is also, typically you can see in people who are unable to lose weight, or inflammation can be in people who can't gain weight. So both the spectrums. So right from stubborn weight to, and of course, if you have disorders, if you have established disease, heart disease, diabetes, and these are all inflammatory. If you have, don't have good nails, if you don't have good hair texture, so something is certainly causing that inside. So that.
Okay, I think this is going to be one of the last questions. what is the role of turmeric and garlic to fight inflammation due to rheumatoid?
What is the role?
The
Okay.
role of turmeric and garlic.
So turmeric is, like I mentioned in the talk also, is very, very powerful anti-inflammatory. The curcumin is one of the most powerful anti-inflammatories known, and that of course is clear. So is also ginger. It's the same family, and garlic has a different mode of action. It has antimicrobial properties, and it has certain other immunomodulating properties which will help in rheumatoid arthritis. And of course, it has sulfur compounds, etc. So it has specific properties for immunomodulation.
Thank you for that. This very last question. How does one manage Hashimoto with diet, and does it affect the body?
Hashimoto's is autoimmune condition, and autoimmunity today, the root cause of autoimmunity is being, especially with Hashimoto's, goes back to the leaky gut, and a diet which the gluten, of course, is something which is completely contraindicated, and the grains which go with gluten, including soya, corn, oats, etc., and dairy also is an irritant. So it depends on whether it's initial or it's, so in the beginning you need to remove dairy as well, and then maybe you can bring it back. And of course you have to replenish the nutrients which are missing in a person with Hashimoto's, and building the gut flora and reducing inflammation. I think that is the same thing which we've spoken about, the multi-pronged approach of rebuilding the gut and restoring nutrition and anti-inflammation.
Thank you so much for such a fabulous session. You've spoken about all the things which we need to hear and understand to improve our health and immunity. But before you go, I just wanted to speak about one
General
last
Prasad
thing,
is still waiting. We have to address this.
About your new app. The new
yes.
app which you have created. So if you could tell us very briefly about that, and how does that work, and how is that beneficial?
I'll just come to that, but this will not be complete, and my conscience will not be. I'm going to carry that burden if I don't answer his question. But alcohol certainly is an integral part of our life and our diets. We need to understand that it can work both ways. A small amount, moderation may not have any kind of a negative effect if the overall diet is all right. But certainly too much will disturb, it's an irritant and it can disturb the gut. So, but for people who have had a vaccination, definitely there is a recommendation to avoid it for a few, maybe somebody says, some scientists are saying 40 days, some scientists are saying something else. But I think a prudent approach will be to cut back at least for 2-3 weeks after the vaccination. And in general, if you're gluten intolerant, then there's no beer for you and everything else is fine. But more than 2 drinks has been established. That's the limit, and anything more than that is you're getting on the edge, and I would say is contraindicated. And when I say 2 drinks, I actually mean 2 small drinks. So sorry to disappoint you, but that's the way it is. And yeah. So about the app.
But I think we will.
Sorry?
Yeah. Sorry,
so
I was just going to say, you said food and drinks are integral parts. So I think we will leave it at that and not go beyond that, isn't it, General Prasad?
But I've also given you the 4 markers by your physical appearance. If you're feeling good about your body, if you're feeling energetic, and if everything else goes okay, your diet is otherwise fine, I think you're good to go. And the app actually is the earlier app was called the weightmonitor.com. But currently, I have to announce that it is undergoing a revamp, and we are working on the entire structure, and it will be out by another name, maybe in the next 3-4 months. So till then, we'll just have to wait.
Okay.
But we started the weight monitor in 2012, and from 12 to this 2021, it worked as the weight monitor, and it was a score-based app. But now a revised version, which is going to be far more with almost like with artificial intelligence, will be out soon. So
Okay. Thank you so much for your time and for the information and all the little nuggets of wisdom which you have shared with us. And we do
Sanjana,
hope
there are one or two
our
more
members-
questions that came up in chat. Do you want to allow those to be answered? Ishi, are you okay with that?
yeah, sure, please. These are
you.
personal questions. Somebody wants an appointment. This is magnesium dose per day. Which brand? I don't want to give you a brand in this session, but I will just give you the dose. For an average person, if there is no other health issue, the ratio is 2:1. So calcium intake of 500 and a magnesium of 250, 300 should be taken in that ratio. And if you're suffering from a depression and gut issues, certainly you are somebody who should get a food intolerance test, a nutritional assessment, and seek individual advice. Possible good food for an irritable bowel syndrome. So we need to not only provide you with good food choices, which are all there, but we also need to understand why you have the IBS in the first place. So you need to also do a deeper dive into your gut and find out what you're reacting to and what are the trigger foods for the IBS. What is a deficiency when we feel pins and needles in the hand? These could be multiple deficiencies, but most likely you can have either an iron deficiency or a B12 deficiency. So we could work on that. Thank you for that, Prabha.
Yeah, I think that's it. The others are, of course, compliments.
Yeah, lots of compliments about how wonderful the session.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad.
Thank you so much. And we would love to have you back. And certainly when the club is open, I'm sure we would be happy to host you. Jen Shankar Prasad would like to share drinks with you as well.
Look forward to that.
One last question, if you allow me. Which of the alcoholic drinks do you think are the most kind of increase the immunity in the body? Is it the beers, is the whiskeys, or is the wines, or is the red wine or a white wine? Because Sanjana and I would definitely want to answer this one.
So yeah, I would, if I was to make a choice, I would look at wines because of their polyphenol benefits. So between red and white would be my choices, red first and white, and both actually have those polyphenol advantage. And after that, it could be anything of your choice. It wouldn't really matter. And maybe some tonic water is a good idea because it does give you that little dash of quinine, which has been found to be useful for keeping the virus away.
I'm going to be drinking gin and tonic in London, and that's the most favored drink in the UK.
Yeah, me too.
Isha, thank you so
Cheers
much.
To that.
Thank you so much for being with us this
evening. Well, there we go. Cheers, and thank you for having me.
There we go.
Hi, Ishi. Hi. How are you?
Hi. Oh, hi.
I've been waiting for my chance. So.
Good to see you, my dear.
Good to see you too.
Right. Thank you so much and answering all our questions. Thank you so much for being in Vasant Vihar. And as Sanjana said, as soon as you feel comfortable, we've already opened our club today. Do come and have a red wine with us. We have plenty.
Look forward to that. I would absolutely look forward. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much.
much.
Ishi. And
thank
have
you.
a nice
thank
evening.
You, Ishi. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you to all the viewers. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you for being a wonderful audience too.
We really enjoyed that session, Ishi.
And thank you to all the audience.
I'm so glad.
I'm so glad. And we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday with a different Zoom-in session. Till then, stay well, stay safe, and have a lovely evening and look after your gut health. Bye-bye.
And Sanjana, you have a lovely afternoon.
How are you?
With red wine, white wine, whatever you're having.
I'm good, Seema. How are you? Let's
I'm
stop the
good.
recording
I'm
first.
good. I'm envying you. Envying